We are live. I'm Jose.
We are live.
Here with in another episode of Weird Loathing in the Windy City with our new host, Ali Alexandra. Ali,
Hello. How's it going?
it's going well. How are you doing today?
Good. It's been a week. Good week, but it's been a crazy week as far as news.
Yeah.
The last 2 weeks. I mean, so much has happened since the last time we even talked about. I mean, we can dive right into Madigan.
Yeah.
Again.
Where do we begin? Yeah.
Oh, I mean, basically, we were talking about this before in the last episode, like whether he's going to make it or not. And at the time, I think we were saying, I think his days are numbered. And then the Black Caucus came out in support of him. So as far as I know, they met, I think it was last weekend, they met and Madigan and the other woman that's also wants to be speaker, Stephanie Koffowit, I believe her last name is, they spoke to the Black Caucus. And at the end of the day, honestly, you pointed out to me, because I was thinking that maybe, Madigan's trying to use them, but I think it's the opposite now that you pointed that out to me. They are definitely going to get their agenda, I would say, furthered, I hope, if they have Madigan, if they back Madigan. Because, being realistic, just like on that WGN interview that's in the show notes with LaShawn Ford, he from Chicago, he was just talking about the reasons why they are supporting Madigan, and it's simply to get their agenda across. Now, he might not get all of the votes, but it's a lot more likely that they'll get their agenda passed through a lot quicker if they have Madigan in their back pocket. So I'm just curious what you think of how things are going, actually.
Like business as usual, to be honest.
Yeah.
Old power players on his way out. What can we get out of the guy before whatever he has comes to him?
I think, like I keep saying, I think Sandoval passing away from COVID, obviously it's extremely sad for his family, everything. Yep. And just, I think he had a ton of key information, and that was going to be really helpful. Now, it's not like they don't have the information anymore, but It's a lot different, that he's not here. But still, they have the information. So I think with that happening, plus Madigan, of course, then right after, it's like clockwork, just the way he operates, like the media dumps, like late at night about Madigan. It's always late at night and buried in the papers. He started talking about whether or not Pritzker would want to have a legislation over an increase in income tax. And of course, Madigan was like, yeah, I would be happy to bring that to the floor. So that's how he can please Pritzker. And then the Black Caucus is obviously huge. Now, I don't know where he stands necessarily with the Latino caucus as far as how that's going. I think, as far as I know, they're a little bit less outspoken just in a general way compared to the Black Caucus. We'll see. Yeah. You're right. Business as usual. But
but it's interesting to see it play out in real time. And it's nice, we don't, I think podcasts and us YouTube people often get accused and accosted of spreading misinformation, but we're reacting to the machinations of the government that governs our life in real time, and it's very complicated and it's very complicated. It's a huge bureaucratic process, and the way that power and policies actually get played out, personalities and real political dynamics are in place. You have to understand them. Ronnie Manuel came into the mayoralship of Chicago. Okay. Thanks, Little, for letting us know.
Okay. I haven't been looking at the comments.
Yeah, rants.
Oh, yeah. They want rants. I can rant later.
Rants if you want to rant. But just Chicago, like Chicago works when there's like Madigan doesn't rant, right?
No.
He doesn't need to, right? He's the velvet hammer, but he's the most powerful person in the Midwest, to hear the Koch brothers network say it, and he's beating them. So, there's something to it. I think the Black Caucus saw that, they've had a unified agenda in terms of jobs, in terms of substantive, like, even criminal justice reform in terms of using the jobs program and working reforms that way, is a more palatable way for, an entryway to, that liberals and even Republicans might be accepting of. So like they're getting their agenda through the way they want it through, and that's what Madigan is good for. He's blocking you from getting what you want the way you want it, because it might upset someone else.
Right.
So when you're getting what you want the way you want it, it's because you've done the work to get your agenda through. He and then is that fair for him to play that kind of counsel and judge? That's what he's really on trial for being corrupt. But as we have other links and we can get to them. But the way that he's pivoted this to even offering Republicans the speakership, but pointing out that their accusations, there's things that they could be accused of. Like on its face, he's both like, step up. Are you gonna step up, and do what I'm doing?
Right.
And then what are you gonna do when people accuse you of all this stuff?
Right.
So like, he's had his defenses for this moment played out probably since he got whiff of these investigations.
Oh yeah.
I'm just wondering when they're gonna blindside him. And it would be in the Latino caucus, which is a little bit more divided. It's a little bit more self-interested in its agenda, whether it's capitalistic or social or a jobs program, or there's a law enforcement aspect in there. There's and then there's also there's a bit of everything. So like Madigan did his deal with Jesus Garcia, which we've covered a little bit. Jesus Garcia by no means is representative of the entirety of the Latino population that makes up the Latino caucus that Madigan needs to bring into the fold. But Madigan was genuinely helpful and ascending Jesus Garcia to a position of power, and disengaging tentacly. Like he doesn't have leverage on Jesus Garcia, but he has that reciprocity of understanding, and that alone gives Jesus Garcia the leverage to unify in a general way the Latino caucus tribes, and their agenda for an ask. If you guys were to do this for Madigan, what would you want? And that conversation wouldn't even be had if Madigan hadn't done the play he did years ago, which is why it's like this. We mentioned how we've been trying to fight against this guy, but he's been playing election cycles ahead of time, 2-3 election cycles ahead of time, and it's if he's being the FBI, I don't know what we're gonna.
I don't think he's going anywhere. I mean, now I will say that in this podcast or on WGN, I keep referring to LaShawn Ford. They were saying, if he is indicted, then we would be happy to come up with somebody else. But we just want to get to work on day one. So having Madigan in their back pocket's the only way that they can really get to work on day one. Because there are those 19 Democrats that are not going to budge. They say, I think. We will see. But they say that they're not going to budge. So they're not going to vote for Madigan. But the thing with that strategy is that you're not going to have the votes for anybody else. So, and this is where I just kind of laugh because the Republicans in this state, I'm going to say like Republicans, because they're really not doing anything. Like Durkin is just as implicated in this ComEd scandal as, not directly, but he's just as involved. Like they need Madigan, like I've been saying from day one. And some of the conversations I've had, most of the Republican Party in the state doesn't even like the leadership there. Because like you said, it's Koch brothers. Like they just do what they do down in Springfield and say that they're fighting the man. But it's like, if you really cared about the people in the state, then you would be at least voicing the changes that need to be made. But you're not. You just keep saying Madigan. Like, they're not going to have anything to do without Madigan. So I don't see him going anywhere. I think he's always thinking 10 steps ahead. That's just who he is. I would like to be surprised, but I don't see it happening. And I thought there's a quote, which we have in the show notes, that Madigan's just talking about Durkin, like you said, he's just like, well, I'd like to see, like, what would he say? Because he's implied too. So, or implicated as well. So we'll see. I think at this point, because I've just been reading so much about Madigan, at this point, I'm just tired of him. I just like, just go away, go away. Him and Berg. I mean, we'll have to see as in the coming days, because we're going to talk more about like the energy issue and how that's all connected with Madigan. That's been a lot of learning for me and how that's all connected. But I think the Black Caucus, I can understand why they're going that direction, because it's a quicker way to get what they need done.
Like, $1 worth 100 right now. It's like, yeah, let's roll the dice, see what we're gonna get out of this agenda. And I mean, I would too if I had that bulk of a punch.
Oh yeah.
I mean, like, and to your point that no one has the votes. I'm sorry, but
no, it's okay.
I think that's also like this, like Madigan as a political chess player, throwing it right back to Durkin. Okay, you be speaker. You have the votes. Oh wait, you're implicated too. Wait, what are you gonna do about that?
What are you gonna do?
You know what? I don't want to deal with that. I'm gonna support you anyway.
Yeah, right.
You really deal with the situation that we would both be in if you had my job. And what are they doing? They're shrinking away from a subpoena. They're shrinking away from even making political hay out of it. This is 10 years. The Koch brothers wasted all of our lives on this guy. Like all of Bruce Browner's governorship. Yeah.
They're all, it's just kind of a joke. I really, like I keep saying, Illinois is like a microcosm of what's going on in Washington, and just people on both sides are frustrated with the establishment, but I find it mildly entertaining just on the Republican side, just because like these people keep getting elected and they're just like convincing people that vote for them that they're really fighting the man. They're not. They're actually, if anything, they're usually just going behind closed doors, and they're all like, most politicians are all friends with each other. So it's all for theater and for show. And I'll be very interested to see what happens when they all come back with Madigan, as far as how this this income tax increase will go over. We'll be like, because a lot of progressives, obviously just in Chicago, even that wasn't necessarily an income tax hike, but they were not going to vote for that. So we'll see how that goes moving forward. I mean, obviously we know the state's broke. I don't know if anybody knew this out in the rest of the country, but Illinois is beyond broke. I don't know how. Nobody knows how they're going to fix it. So,
yeah, the pensions. I mean, the pensions are broke on purpose. Like that's something that's a CTU point, but it's like ingrained in my head. Like the teacher's pension was set up. And it is a little bit stacked. Like teachers don't get Social Security once they're retired. They just like forgo their Social Security altogether. That's something they don't get. But they put in like $1, and I think they get in like one, like the first 5 years, like 2 if you're there for 15, and then like 3 back if you're there, like of your salary as you're going up, paying into your pension. So there's like a step program that's very generous if you stay employed, which is another way they can socially condition teachers to be so terrified of losing their job that they'll do anything that the state and city and county tell them to do. So like people that are decrying the pensions of teachers as being unfair for them are like, that's disingenuous. Let's not do that. But now what happens is that the state owes much. Yeah, they owe so. Sorry.
No.
They owe so much in pension money, they borrow from that fund. So instead of the state doing their part of, the state's like, we're going to pay this much in pensions, but not right now. Instead, we're going to spend that money on this. And they've done that for 30 years. And they're like, oh man, we're broke. It's like, well, who did that? Like,
right. Like you guys did that. And no, and I agree. And I think teachers, a lot of like public servants in the state, because that's how they get you. I mean, in a way, they're like, yeah, work for the state. Then you're essentially, going, like you said, you're going to do whatever we want. You're a voter for life. And so I hate that, because like then, like honestly, just for example, teachers get the blame, like, oh, they're taking their pensions. Like, I mean, that's not on them. That's on, like you said, the state for designing it this way. So it's coming to a head. I mean, I'm sure people have said this before 5 years ago, 10 years ago, because it's just we keep kicking the can down the road. But I just don't think that the people who pay taxes, just everyday people, should have to bear the burden of that. But again, this is why I always call it the Republicans in the state. They're not doing anything. They just say Madigan's not going to change it. But like, well, what's your plan? You have no plan.
Right.
And they kick out the people that do have a plan.
And if your 10-year plan gets outplayed by like 2-3 moves that this guy saw you coming and did, like, why are we letting those Republicans capitalize on half of the political capital in this country? I hate this argument. They're like, oh, you know where the Republicans are coming from? They're ivory tower liberals. They don't care whether you live or die. And I hate that the Democrats lie about doing that. The Republicans are at least honest about it. No, they're not. You know, like and the thing is, it's like the Republican Party is weaker in Illinois. So like we should kill them first. You know, that's my analysis. That's my analysis from the ground. You know, like if there's 2 weak liberal Hydra heads and the Republicans are the weaker one locally, kill them completely so they stop wasting your time. And they're the ones that are pushing ranked choice voting because that dilutes the Democrats' power here. I would help those folks with that because the Democrats can still keep most of their infrastructure. I don't think that Madigan is the one that's keeping these groups together. Yeah. A lot of it just kind of like dissolve. And I don't know. I think that there's a lot that's possible right now because powerful figures in law enforcement, people like Madigan, people like the Koch brothers, they didn't really know what to expect out of this election season. You know, does Trump win outright? Does Biden, get caught in his coup? He still might. I don't know what's going on there.
Yeah, I don't know.
I don't know if he does. It's like, oh no, I didn't see it coming. But oh well. But and then this is America. Like, and
God bless.
There was too much at stake and too many self-interested parties doing their own thing. But now we're seeing that things are kind of falling into some kind of sense, and that it seems that politically, Madigan does have the upper hand on the Republican Party. Legally, does the FBI have, witnesses that can tie Madigan to other things that we have no idea about? I don't know. That I get. I don't know. I can't speculate. I don't even want to speculate on. I can just.
I know. I could speculate. I don't want to go on record for that. But
right. It's easy too when you're like living in Chicago or around all stuff. You know all the stories and histories and family members and cousins and neighbors, and you're like, yeah. But but.
Well, we'll always revisit Madigan because I'm sure things will change again in the meantime in the next week. But I'm just calling it now. He's not going anywhere. He's not going anywhere. No way. And I don't know. I just want to see what happens if he stays, frankly. I want to see how other players kind of use him to further their agenda. Because also the last thing I'll say about this is that, like, let's say the Black Caucus, they're going to continue their support. So they all go to vote for the speaker. And then on the issues, obviously, that the Black Caucus agenda, which are all great things. I mean, like just police reform, all of that's on their agenda. So are you going to want to be that Democrat that goes against that? Probably not. Or I don't think you would want to be, at least not in this state, the way it's run. So I don't know. We'll have to see. We will have to see.
Yeah.
I don't know. But
I saw that
go ahead. Actually, before we move on. Go ahead.
My last point was Sunrise Kids were out there protesting him. I think that's awesome. They should be protesting him, bird dogging him, annoying him, and getting to know him because he is the linchpin of all power in Illinois, and he's what's keeping ComEd. ComEd is playing ball because they have to, and I don't know. Like, would Madigan just say, "Hey, ComEd, I never wanted you to do all those illegal things. Maybe we shouldn't let a private company that has a fiduciary self-interest be running our energy program. Maybe these Sunrise kids actually have some policy like municipalizing ComEd that I should consider." He is that open for business right now, in my opinion. And he would love some PR cover. So, like, get everybody that has an agenda should be bird dogging him, annoying him, and trying to get their agenda in right now.
Oh yeah, they should be annoying him. I mean, he's such a, before we move on, actually, like, he's just to go off what you said, he's such a mysterious figure still, even though he's been running the state forever. Like, there's kids, I'm sure, like, running around that have never even heard of him. I certainly didn't until I moved to the state of Illinois. He's just not, like, if people really understood the power that he had, I think they would have a better understanding of just how politics work in general, because it's almost so, the corruption's so open in this state, even if you don't really know about Madigan, just it's so blatant. I think that really is a reflection of the whole country. And so also that's probably why I'm really cynical about politics. But I just, because, the thing about Madigan, again, like, he'll sometimes just tell you outright, like, he'll say, I really don't see a problem, more or less in his words, I don't see a problem with helping your friends get jobs. Because that's essentially what they were doing with ComEd. But there's lots of other things that go into that. But yeah, when he puts it like that, I think he can still kind of reach some people of his, like, people in his district that do support him. They really resonate with that, because they're like, yeah, he's our guy. He's helping us out. So you're never going to lose that support. And that's again, the Chicago way. You're just helping your friends. But it always starts like that, but it never ends well. It ends in a ComEd scandal that really, I think it was 30% increase for everybody in the state to pay.
Yeah, that's not great. That's not great.
Yeah. And so when I was talking to somebody who's more involved in the Republican Party in this city, he was telling me about how, I'll actually go into this a little bit, how in this state of Illinois, the Republicans, how they organize. And I was amused slightly. I said, how do you organize? He was saying, well, we all just operate very independently. We don't really work together. And I couldn't help myself. I said, well, that's probably why you're not doing that great. Because I was just like, what's the message? And like, well, taxes. And I'm like, yeah, but that's not going to be that issue that, like, gets, like, people that otherwise would be voting Democrat to, like, vote for you. Like, that's not going to resonate. But I just found it really interesting, kind of like how out of touch they were with, like, a lot of, like, cultural issues in the state, and, like, they need Madigan. That's all I'm gonna say. But when it comes to organizing, I didn't want to give him too many pointers, but I was just like, that's an odd strategy to have just, like, a bunch of little local groups together, but not really together. And the thing is, most of them push out any opposing voices within their own party, so they just alienate everybody else. And it's just kind of just to watch them, like, slowly die. And like you said, the Koch brothers wasted decades on fighting Madigan. So we shall see. But so actually, we can move on to the other story. And Kira talked about it a little bit today at HLM, but it was about, obviously, this video, which I'm sure most people have seen. It is awful. We're not going to show it on here, but you could go watch it if you want. I mean, so I think this happened, I would believe it was in 2019, CPD. Yeah, it was CPD, got an informant tip. That's all it was, just an informant tip. And accidentally, raided this woman's home. She's naked. I mean, like, just watching it is infuriating and just sad. Like, there's, I honestly, like, how would you feel? How would anybody feel? So, like, Lightfoot's approach, or her response to that, was interesting to me. I want to give her the benefit of the doubt only because she was not the mayor at the time this happened. Obviously, we know
Right.
That all happened, with other instances, obviously. So I'm just curious to see where this goes, because in today's city council meeting, she had a bit of a spat with some of the aldermen about the video. And I did appreciate Alderman Cito Lopez from Pilsen. Yes, he, I like that he pushed back, because people do need to hear about this. I mean, that video is disturbing. And my only response otherwise is that, like, on CBS, they're talking about it like this is something new. This has been happening in Chicago forever. It's CPD.
Yeah.
I just so, and I think Lightfoot, the reason that she had such a bit of a, she wasn't really trying to entertain any of that today at the city council meeting because she planned on coming out later, and a few hours ago she apologized to the woman. But the city, I don't know why the city tried to block CBS from getting that video. I'm curious what your thoughts are on that. Not on the council meeting, but just why. I wonder why the city would want to block that.
Oh, I don't think it reflects better on Lightfoot for saying that she didn't know her administration was doing that.
Right.
But I do think that, and it's a hard thing to say, and the fact is that she's not a reformer, so she wouldn't be saying this against, but just as a city, you wouldn't want anything that's damaging to your image as a city, to your processes, to your systems, to be out in the open in the press. You rather pay out a family over a lawsuit or something. Or in the case of this poor woman, Miss Young, really, threatened her. Asadla. This was almost like, don't you dare go to the press over this. And that's the way that the city's overall posturing was. That's what needs to change.
Mm-hmm.
When Lori Lightfoot was running, while Ron Emanuel was still, in somewhat good graces nationally before the Quan McDonald video really came out and impacted everyone. It had come out, but he was before he dropped out under that pressure, she was there to reform that culture that Ron was acquiescing and trying to give a PR facelift on.
Mm-hmm.
And, so far, I think that, to her credit, I don't think that she's done what Ron has done, which is,
no.
She's running around in the costume a little bit, but she's not bringing in CNN to do documentaries of the Chicago way.
Right.
And trying to give it a R-wire and this is what you have to do. Right. She wants to be she liked being a meme. She liked the go back to the house meme. She liked being kind of like that tough mayor that cares. But it did, obviously today she was caught in that contradiction. She can't, normalize this system of violence that was rightly pointed out, in the city council meeting that, but to her point, reforming it, what is she gonna? That's really what her last budget should have been on. She got her budget in. She didn't really want to handle it in that moment. I think because politically, the way she's handling it now, even though she's on her face lying about it, is cleaner than, if her budget hadn't passed and this video came out and she was on the defense, and then she has really avoided as much spectacle on this. But what she needs to do now is chop off some heads over these types of practices at CPD, because it's time. It's time. CPD, we put it all on Trump. It didn't work out. You guys had a huge riot, in Washington, D.C. People aren't that shook. We don't know what's going to happen with Medicare for all. We don't have to, this is a Chicago-centric show. We can talk more about the Chicago protest scene here if you'd like and what's going on with that. But where people are facing eviction, they're facing, bankruptcies, they're losing family members.
It's not good.
It's not great. So Lori Lightfoot and the cops, they played it their way and she played it hers. And now they're at this impasse. She's clearly caught up and she has enough cover that she can maybe clean this up, but she has to decide now if she's going to keep trying to run PR cover for the police, who are maintaining an abusive, unsustainable system of violence, or get real, just not just install new people, Chop off powerful heads, chop off powerful legs, put in some real reforms. Don't just say we're going to add more cameras. You know, we're going to do a few things. Like, you have to put up. She understands the power of putting on a show for the public. There's also why there was public executions, you know, during times like this. You know, so she's a big city mayor.
Yeah, and I think obviously a lot of people are upset because she didn't reform as much as she wanted. But in all honesty, and like there are some ways, like in the city budget, that I can say, quote, reformed. I mean, they did reallocate some funds. Now, it wasn't much by any means, but the problem is that they saw the huge budget and they're still like militarized. I mean, just like that, after that video, like if you, which I don't know how you wouldn't know, but if you are privileged in either, it's not even, I don't even mean that in a bad way, but if you really are just in the city because of the neighborhoods and the way the differences are, if you are lucky enough to not really have interactions with the police every day, you'd still be hard pressed to not know what's going on. But after this video, like I was just, you know, like obviously looking at Twitter and all the things people are saying, and it's amusing to me slightly that some people are like, oh, I can't believe this goes on. And I'm just like, well, yeah, glad you're here. Welcome. But, you know, I guess better late than never. But the thing is now she's going to have everybody coming at her. And just, she did really run on that reform style. And I understand that there, you know, politics play into it. I also, like I've mentioned before, think that she's got bigger aspirations. I think Chicago's just a step. And I do try to give her the benefit of the doubt when I can. I've criticized her a lot, but that's the thing with her. She'll sometimes throw me off and do something good. I'm like, oh, okay. So I just, I wonder, her relationship with the superintendent, David Brown, is interesting to me. And he's very quiet now. Like, I don't know if you noticed, like he's a lot quieter than he was over the summer. I feel like he's not as forward facing. So I'm not sure why that is. Usually I feel like the police superintendent is pretty vocal, but he's been pretty quiet. He's an interesting character to me, actually. And I don't know, because I'm blanking on where he came from. It was in Texas, but he was the first police officer to ever use like a robotic machine to kill somebody, which I thought that was very interesting. I should have a link to that on our show notes. I don't, but look that up sometime. He's a very interesting person to me. Yeah, he was the first ever. Yeah, I know it sounds weird, it's like robotic, but that's what it was. It's like he did not shoot the person.
Right, so he's doing warfare stuff. That's neat.
Yeah, so it's to me that's like it speaks kind of volumes about him. Like he didn't directly shoot somebody, but he used, you know, there was something in the middle of doing that to another person. So to me, that's kind of shows like, it's like symbolic of his character. He's pretty removed. And I don't know if he really knew what he was getting into when he came to Chicago either. So that's just a little side note. You'll have to look into that later. But he's been pretty quiet about things. So actually I do have a friend, her husband is a cop. So I was just asking some questions, as I usually do. And I'm not going to name him. He wouldn't like that. But needless to say, I probably won't be talking to him anytime soon. But it's a good friend of mine. But I just really asked, like, what do you think of, you know, Miss Young's video? Like, honestly, like, how do you explain that as a police officer? I'm not saying you have to explain the actions of every cop, but like, you know, for people that are complaining about how everybody wants to defund the police, I'm just like, honestly, at this point, can you blame people for something like that? Like, how do you explain that? And it's like they like completely disassociate from that stuff, and they don't want to admit that they're really part of that organization, or they say that they're used to fighting, you know, gangbangers and such. So something like this, like based on an informant tip, like, you know, it was supposed to work out and it didn't. And we were just going back and forth because at the end of the day, he has yet to really explain to me how you can justify barging in on a woman like that. She's saying, it's not me, I'm not the right person. She's naked. And then they've just let her just stand there. It's like the most, I mean, and let's just be honest, in Chicago, if that would have happened in a neighborhood, I don't know, like, honestly, like Lakeview, Lincoln Park, which is a different demographic, that would have been, come on. And I hate to say it, but it's just the truth. Somebody has, you know, they'll never say it, but it's just, and I know this isn't news to you, but this is more for people I know who, like I say, don't have to constantly deal with police their whole lives. It's harder for them to really comprehend that cops are just another gang. And of course, like my friend's husband was saying, who's a cop, it's for CPD. I don't know if I mentioned that. He says, there's good, those are just bad apples. And like, then why don't any of you start speaking out against it, like, or just asking for reform? I don't understand it. And then we got into an argument about the code of silence, and that was that. So, because he essentially doesn't understand why the average person doesn't empathize with the code of silence. So I was just like, all right, well,
why would you?
I know it's something. It just go ahead.
Cops. I feel like cops create gangbangers and then emulate gangbangers that they create. That's kind of ultimately how I feel about it. That's not that we don't need law enforcement or we don't want human trafficking. We don't want violence. We don't want, we do want like keepers of peace. But like what Chicago is doing, that video of Miss Young, that is what all of these powers of discretion, of new technology, of surveillance, of the laws covering for what police do and their records, and us being able to study their patterns and make policy assessments from it. All of that, shows up in that video of just the complete failure of the system, of what it's really intended to do, of what it really is, which is the system of terrorizing people. We can police people in a transparent, much more democratic way. We're smart enough people to do it. This paranoia of other people, I feel, comes from the cult of law enforcement. Was one of my focuses before I delete my Twitter account, which I will delete. I will. I know people would love me too. I will.
No.
Oh my god, that sounded awful. Sounds like Trump. No, but just the Mexican Senate recently passed some law enforcement reforms that would change the way that the DEA and different U.S. law enforcement agencies interact with Mexican law enforcement agencies. And specifically, basically, the U.S. clammed up and started doing their own thing, and Mexico clammed up and now is starting to do their own thing. But in a lot of ways, I do think that would be best for cleaning up the corruption that I think has been exacerbating violence on either side. And that reality setting in, I think, is what the police culture needs to accept the soft reforms that someone like Lori Lightfoot could usher in. Hopefully could bring the snowball of, moving different fundings that would go into law enforcement and calling it something else.
Yeah.
A bunch of people that have been doing law enforcement can certainly help monitor public spaces, through digital means and do different types of home care visits and stuff like that under a different umbrella, under a different department with different training that's much more healthcare oriented and public safety, public health awareness oriented, and less punitive law enforcement. And that's the way that we can slowly, using a municipality like Chicago, maybe change all of that.
Yeah, because it's just the whole culture. And I at the beginning of the summer, when everything was after George Floyd, obviously everything exploded. Obviously, that's not news to anybody. But even still, like the defund the police, I'm just going to bring this up because a lot of people are still talking about it, and a lot of establishment Democrats are that's kind of like the war, obviously, within that party is like, well, they blame progressives for saying defund the police. That was, that's the reason that we didn't do so well in certain areas. But I was talking to this police officer again, my friend's husband, and he says, who do people think that they're going to call when something goes wrong? Like, you want to just get rid of them altogether. I'm like, no, that's not the goal. It's just reform has already happened. That's what Rom tried. That's what body cams are. Now we just see what you guys do. You're not really, how are you like really reforming? Like just the way that even just the way they talk to people. And again, I know this isn't news to anybody. We're just going back and forth here, but I think for Lori Lightfoot, this video that's come out, I can see why she, even if she didn't know, I can see why she wouldn't want it out. She wanted to get ahead of it and apologize first before, there were other conversations about it. But I think this is a chance for her to really show people that she kind of sort of meant what she said, and it wasn't just all talk. I mean, there's so many ways that it could be done. Even just like when you go downtown now, there's still cops just sitting on Michigan Avenue. No one's there. Nothing's open. I mean, some stuff's open, but it's not the same circumstances as it was, a few months ago. And then that just shows, again, the way the city's run, they only see value in protecting the property because they're just putting all the cops, the resources that they do have downtown to protect that property. When then there's people that really do need police, actual police that are waiting, sometimes hours, depending on where you live, for services. So it's just a mix of really bad calls. And I'm not saying I have all the answers, but, I feel for all the people that have been organizing in Chicago for far longer than I've even been here, because I hate to see all the work that they've done just be kind of swept away. And I don't think it is being swept away, but I just don't love how people take that defund the police saying and kind of ruin it. It doesn't mean that you have none on this earth. It's just there's a clear mental health issue in this country, definitely in the city. And, this cop I was talking to said, "What do you people expect us to be?" And he said that to me. I was like, okay, what do you mean? He's just like, we have to be social workers. We have to be domestic violence, deal with all that. I'm like, okay, but do you have any solutions then on how to reform? Or you just want to bitch about Lori Lightfoot, which they do all the time. Right. Yeah.
Their boss. Yeah. Everyone hates their boss.
Oh, yeah.
Not everybody can kill whoever they want, whenever they want, but everyone hates their boss. Everyone fantasizes about killing their boss, maybe, but maybe. Maybe, I don't know. Cops, cops have had it pretty cushy in America.
Yeah.
They came out of the slave catcher system, and in Chicago specifically, they were to stop workers from getting drunk and killing each other and blowing up factories because the wages were low. They were just there to protect the property. They've always just been soldiers for the capital class. Michael Bloomberg called NYPD his own personal standing army. When I took a criminal justice class, one class I took at UIC when I was getting my bachelor's, he was a cop, but he was funny. But Schiller Serpico, so that's how we learn about the blue code, the code of silence, and learn about discretion, and mostly just that basically the police are a standing army. That their role is that of a standing army. So that's what their culture is. But what they're here to, they're not here to make America great or keep society awesome. And if society was cleaned up and nice and wholesome and healthy, then they wouldn't have anything to do and they wouldn't have a job. So that's my other thing, with the whole war on drugs and stuff like that.
Oh, yeah.
I think that technology and the reality of our surveillance state should just guide law enforcement towards those natural liberal reforms that are pretty soft on its face, but it would have drastic changes on its culture overall. And that's really what they're resisting, that militarized culture that feeds into itself. And I do think that it's intertwined with, like Madigan is controlling ComEd goons. ComEd is hiring whoever he wants. These are just muscle heads, meatheads for Madigan. And then Burke has the cops.
Yeah.
So what you have is a bunch of people that are basically just loyal to this system of fossil fuel industry and law enforcement industry, and it's all intertwined. that it creates its own subculture that, you know, builds and feeds into itself, and it's so global.
Mm-hmm.
You're talking about fossil fuel energy. You know, you're talking about the reasons that we go to war and guide our home foreign policy over.
We're spreading
It's
democracy.
powerful and permanent, right? You're like, how could they not feel totally empowered to kill whoever they want and talk smack about the mayor and their boss? You know, because they're soldiers for this army, for this cause that is guiding the whole world towards extinction. And I mean, they're not going to mess up a good thing. I think that people are self-aware of it enough that, you know, we can maybe start curbing it a little bit in a different way.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, as we talk more, maybe on the next episode about what you were saying with the reforms in Mexico, as far as that, I would love to talk about that some more, because that's fascinating to me how that's all interconnected.
Cienfuegos. It's a fun. You should follow. You should follow what Washington Post is saying about Cienfuegos. We'll talk about it. But yeah, for sure. Sorry, you had the point.
Oh no, I was. We'll keep it a little short tonight. We can wrap it up. I mean, I could go on and on about all these topics, but and again, this is nothing new talking about the cops. But that video, like many other instances, you know, that's remarkable of her, honestly, to want to put that out there, because it is such a personal, you know, experience. I can't imagine going through that. It would be traumatic. And she's, you know, a social worker, and just like hearing her voice in that, and it's just like these cops, there's these little zombies, they're just standing around. I'm like yelling at my like phone, like watching, I'm like, get her or something. And then they give her like one coat. Like, that's, I'm sorry, but you don't have much of an argument when your department's doing that. Like, and then, you know, there was a video of some more body cam footage of the other guys in the cop car. I think this was after the raid. And they're like just talking about how they had the wrong address. And I'm just like, okay, if we're not like skilled on finding the right address, or like on our informants, then maybe we should go back to, you know, the drawing board here, because it's not working. And yeah, it just, the argument I had it was over text. It was hardly an argument. I do look forward to the next time that I actually see him, because at the end of the day, are there good natured police officers? I'm sure some people won't like that I say this. Sure. There's a couple, I'm sure. But like, at the end of the day, if you're not speaking out against it, I know you might think you're going to lose your job, but you can't really be mad when millions of Americans have been treated like just dirt by people who just have a badge. They're just little sentinels of the state. They're not. Yeah. And I honestly did not used to have this much, you know, this extreme of an opinion about it, but obviously over the years, because, you know, and so I can't imagine growing up in Chicago. I understand the sentiment. So I hope he is watching this episode, but it's just, it's a shame. So I hope that, you know, Miss Young at least understands, or will understand, the impact of this video. I hope that she at least feels like she was able to at least bring to light something that for some reason some people still didn't really understand.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And on that note, she also has a clear mission. You know, you mentioned she's a social worker, and she's bringing in not just police reform, but social work reform. People have pointed out that social work in and of itself is not the answer, because that system is a bit broken itself, not a bit, pretty broken. But the people that go into it generally go into it for the right reasons, you know, and she's you know, working that angle. You know, that's also the reason why it was such a shock to me that Lori would go on to defend, and that she was going to be the face of defending the city criminalizing the release of this video.
Yeah.
Because that's a very strong move to do, to the benefit of Silicon Valley and the police state overall, and to the detriment of the public, especially with what's upcoming. And it was nice to see that in real time. Lori didn't have a stomach for it. She was gathering the ramifications, and she was like, I don't know. She wants to step away from this altogether. She can better demonstrate that by giving us someone's head.
Yeah, that's what I would like to see, in some capacity, just something, because you can't really, the time's up, because now everybody from all angles, you could see it on Twitter, everything that people are saying to her. People, all demographics are like, hey, I voted for you to be some kind of reformer here. you're kind of doing more of the same, or they just see Lori like blaming it all on Trump. Well, can't do that anymore, dear. So let's plan. So we'll have to see what happens, by the next time we meet again. I hope something good comes from it. We'll have to see. I'm sure she'll come out tomorrow with some more comments, or at least I hope maybe in the next few days.
Bad move on her part. Blaming. She has to stop.
So the blaming.
But well, like, I'm bad at this. I have a very toxic personality on Twitter, but it's also because I don't want to be taken seriously by people that might be concerned about narco trafficking or what they're doing with their off time. I'm just someone that says things because I notice things, and I'm gonna stop saying them soon. Right, it's just stuff. But Lori has a way of attacking people personally when they're coming at her. Like she mentioned about Cincho Lopez, that he has done racist things to refugees and immigrants. And I'm like, that's a bit of a. I'm guessing you have something, and I'm guessing he said something like, maybe indelicately, but like it's a stretch, and if that's a terrible line to hold on to, like especially in the city like that works much better with a soft hand like Madigan's. And then she's attacking reporters like Fran Spielman and I'm sorry, I think it was Gregory Pratt.
Yeah.
Like she's just going after legacy media now that has really been much more helpful to her than not, and ascending her to a bigger national stage. So, to the credit, of the city council, it did fluster her enough to show that, she is putting on more of an act as a tough big city boss. But she needs, she needs the media, she needs her funders, and she needs her power players. And this is a very shady town. They got her in, they got their budget, and now they don't need help. They don't really need to be as helpful.
No.
So now really she's in the middle of governing, and we're really going to see what she's about. And that'll be interesting.
Exactly. Now it well said. I couldn't have put it any better myself. So, all right. Well, I think we can wrap it up for this episode. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. And hopefully within the next week or so, we can do some more episodes. All right.
For sure. Thanks, Allie. Thanks, everyone. Have a great night.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.